Honor those who gave their lives in World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam War, and all wars. On Memorial Day, we pause with reverence to honor those who gave their life while serving in the military. We owe it to those fallen heroes and their families to never forget the true meaning of Memorial Day. Many who died while serving in the armed forces were at the very start of their life. They had plans, dreams, and hopes. They were looking forward to a future filled with friends and family. They were the next police officers, scientists, engineers, and of course, teachers. On Memorial Day, we must remember the families who were never able to see their loved ones fulfill their dreams. Don't forget to let them know that their family member is appreciated and remembered. Let them know that the ultimate sacrifice, the price that was paid for our continued freedom, will not be forgotten. President Franklin Roosevelt said, "Those who have long enjoyed such privileges as we enjoy forget in time that men have died to win them." So, this weekend, enjoy the days off, spend time with friends and family, but always remember the true meaning of Memorial Day. Remember the mothers, daughters, sons, and fathers who served our country and gave their life defending our freedom. Thank you, and may God bless our fallen, our veterans, our active military, and this great nation, the United States of America. I wish you and your families all the best as we continue to deal with the current COVID-19 crisis. Thank you, everyone, and have a nice holiday weekend.
Dr. Bielecki has spoken about the true meaning of Memorial Day. And as we pause today to remember those who have given their lives in service to the United States, it is important for us to remember them as more than simply names on the memorials that dot our city, including the War Memorial in front of Henry Ford Centennial Library and the memorials at Dearborn High, Etzel Ford, and Fortson. For the last 10 years, I have been researching the lives, service, and deaths of the nearly 400 men and one woman with connections to Dearborn who lost their lives during our country's wars. Many, if not most of these service members, had connections to the Dearborn Public Schools. The cornerstone of my work has always been that each name on Dearborn's memorial has a story, and that each of those names represents a life cut short. I believe it is our duty as Americans to not only honor and remember these men and women, but to learn about who they were.
Hi there, my name is Mark Cooksey. My uncle was Gerard Antilia. He was a ball turret gunner on a B-17 bomber during World War II that looked just like this one. Gerard was born in 1923 in Tecumseh, just east of Windsor. He had a younger brother and two sisters, one of which is my mother. As a boy, he liked to go fishing with his father and grandfather in Lake St. Clair. He also liked model airplanes and Tarzan movies. Gerard went to Fortson High School when his family moved to Dearborn. In 1942, like many young men at the time, Gerard volunteered to fight in the war. Unfortunately, on July 16, 1944, on a mission over Munich, Germany, my uncle's plane was shot down and he was killed along with the pilot. This is a picture of what Gerard looked like and his crewmates. Curtis Lovelace was the name of the pilot. After the war, my uncle's body was brought back home. He's now buried in Our Lady of the Lake Cemetery in Windsor. It's been a long time since my uncle's been gone, but we've never forgotten him. It's always nice when people ask us about Gerard because it tells us that his life and his sacrifice have not been forgotten. Thank you for letting me share his story.
Walter Blankertz was the son of Herman and Caroline Blankertz. Walter's father was active in the Dearborn community, serving as fire chief, village treasurer, as well as on the school board and the village council. Walter graduated from Dearborn High School. The year is unknown. In August of 1918, Walter was serving in France with the U.S. Army during the Second Battle of the Marne. On August 1, 1918, Walter's unit was concealed in a shell hole when German infantry and artillery scored a direct hit. He and 6 of his fellow soldiers were killed instantly. Originally buried in France, Walter's remains were returned to the United States in 1921 and laid to rest at Northview Cemetery here in Dearborn. The son of Glenmore and Ethel Passage, Donald Passage grew up near Plymouth, Michigan. He attended Fordson High School for a time, before returning to Plymouth to complete his education. Donald enlisted in the Army in 1941, shortly after he was married. In 1942, Donald was serving in Morocco with an infantry unit. Although under heavy enemy fire from the front and the flank, Private First Class Passage kept his machine gun in action, silencing enemy fire, enabling his troops to withdraw to positions from which they could effectively engage the enemy. His actions cost him his life. Donald was posthumously awarded the Distinguished Service Cross for his actions, our nation's second highest military award for gallantry in action. He is buried at the North American Cemetery in Tunisia. Born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1920, Edwin Philipczak was the son of Stanley and Mary Philipczak. His father owned a hardware store in Dearborn. Edwin graduated from Fordson High School in 1940 and joined the Navy in 1942. He was married, and he and his wife Thelma had a daughter. Edwin was trained as a pilot and was killed when the plane that he was flying experienced mechanical failure on a training flight in August of 1944. His remains were never recovered, and as of 2020, he is still listed as unaccounted for. Edward Bielecki was born in Springwells Township on July 14, 1925. One of 2 sons of Stanley and Anna Bielecki, Edward attended Fordson High School. He entered the Army in 1943 and was sent to Europe in June of 1944. Approximately 3 months later, Edward died of wounds received in action in Belgium. Edward's remains were repatriated in 1948, and he was buried at Arlington National Cemetery in Arlington, Virginia. James Victor Henderson was born in 1922 to Victor and Bertha Henderson. He graduated from Dearborn High School in 1940 and entered the Army Air Forces in 1943, shortly after he was married. In April of 1945, James was serving as a top turret gunner on a B-17 when he was killed during a mission over Germany. His remains were repatriated to the United States in 1949, and he was buried at Arlington National Cemetery in Arlington, Virginia. Donald Marx was born in 1919 to Charles and Martha Marx. Donald graduated from Dearborn High in 1937 and was married in 1940. The father of a young daughter, Donald joined the Navy in 1944. He was serving as a crew member on the USS Underhill in July of 1945 when it struck a Japanese Kai-10, or manned torpedo. Donald was one of the 112 lost when the Underhill sank. Donald's remains were not recovered, and as of 2020, he is still listed as unaccounted for. He is listed on the Tablets of the Missing at Manila American Cemetery in the Philippines. Warren Phu Collec was born in 1921, the son of William and Alva Phu Collec. Warren graduated from Dearborn High School in 1940 and married his wife Jean in 1941. Warren and Jean had 2 sons, Warren and Lawrence. Warren was drafted in June of 1944 and sent to Europe in 1945. He was killed in action in France in March of 1945 on his first day in combat. his actions earned him the Bronze Star and Purple Heart. He is buried at Epinal American Cemetery in France. Daymond Brown was born in 1930 to George and Grace Brown. He attended Salina and Rouleau schools in Dearborn before enlisting in the Army in 1949. He arrived on the Korean front in August of 1950. He was twice wounded in action, once in September of 1950 and again on January 29, 1951. After recovering from his second wound, Daymond returned to combat in February and was killed in action just days later. Daymond is buried at Detroit Memorial Park West in Redford Township. Alexander Facchini was born November 7, 1933, one of 6 children of Salvatore and Jessie Facchini. His family called him Alec. He attended Dearborn High School and enlisted in the Marine Corps shortly after his graduation. Alec was sent to Korea in May of 1952 and was killed in action on August 7, 1952, less than a year after his enlistment. Alec is buried in Holy Sepulchre Cemetery in Southfield, Michigan. Charles Hanselman, Douglas McElroy, and Michael Niezgoda were all graduates of Edsel Ford. The 3 friends joined the Army together during the summer of 1967. They were together for nearly all of their Army service. They rode the bus to Fort Wayne together, they swore their oath of service together, and they traveled to Fort Knox for basic training together. They were then all sent to Alabama for advanced individual training at the same time. Although they were assigned to different Army units, the 3 friends arrived in Vietnam just before the Christmas of 1967, within hours of each other. They made a pact to spend Christmas of 1968 together when they were all home from Vietnam. Tragically, that was not to be. Chuck Hanselman graduated from Edsel Ford in January of 1967. He lettered in track, and his friends remember him as a kind-hearted young man of great character. They told of his leather jacket, his love for the Motown sound, and how he always stood up for people. Chuck arrived in Vietnam on December 23, 1967, and was killed in action on January 9, 1968. Doug McElroy lettered in football and basketball while at Edsel, graduating in June of 1966. An only child, Doug was remembered by his high school counselor as being polite and quiet, and for loving sports. While in Vietnam, Doug served with an infantry unit. He was killed in action on January 10, 1968, one day after Chuck. Michael Niezgoda played for the VFW Engineers hockey team growing up and graduated from Edsel Ford in 1966. His mother remembers him not caring much for school, although he did enjoy shop class. He had a 1966 Mercury Comet Caliente that he loved. Michael arrived in Vietnam in December of 1967 and was killed in an ambush in September of 1968, the last of the 3 friends who enlisted together to give his life for his country. Born in 1947 to Nicholas and Maria Gandolfo, Philip Gandolfo was the youngest of 6 children. He loved music and played in a band. Philip graduated from Fordson High School in 1966 and was drafted into the Army in 1967. Later that year, Philip was serving with the 1st Infantry Division when he was killed in an explosion. Philip is buried at Holy Sepulchre Cemetery in Southfield, Michigan. Thomas Gentine was born in Detroit in 1947. He graduated from Dearborn High School in 1965 and joined the Army in 1967. A lieutenant, Thomas served as a platoon leader with the 4th Infantry Division. On May 12, 1969, his platoon came under attack. Disregarding his own safety, Thomas moved through enemy fire to better position his men and was mortally wounded. He is buried at Arlington National Cemetery in Arlington, Virginia. Based on the research completed by the Dearborn Memorial Project, more than 200 former students of the Dearborn Public Schools have given their lives in service to the United States. They served and died in countries around the world, and many have never returned to the United States. Some were laid to rest in cemeteries far from Dearborn, some were buried at sea, and some have not yet been found. May we as a city and we as a school district honor them this year and every year, and remain grateful for all that they gave up so that we may continue to live in freedom. May they rest in peace.